guys, City Wall here, and welcome back to Kobayashi Island. This is episode 39 and a half, the stay-at-home special. Before we get into anything, I just want to encourage you all to wear masks when you go outside, wear gloves if you touch anything that other people touch, don't touch your face, disinfect your phone, things like that. This is serious business, and the better everyone does, the sooner we'll all get through this. So, first thing is I wanted to show you guys the winner of the build-off competition. And it is funny because I remember when I announced the build-off competition that I couldn't just have one submission and that's automatically the winner, but that actually is what happened, and I'm okay with it because the submission was incredible, absolutely amazing. So this was submitted by Leeijo, and I'm just going to read you his short little description of what he built. Wave Gardens was envisioned as a modern redevelopment of some undeveloped / disused land by the rail tracks, designed to add some walkable green space to the urban texture of that area of Kobayashi. Undulating terrace gardens sculpt around a passage that is meant to shorten the walk to a nearby station. The main inspiration for the project was a development in Luxembourg City. They redeveloped the Royal Hamilius bus station into a sort of shopping mall, but a single building owner refused to sell his land, so they kind of built around him and were forced to incorporate him. That's why I, as in Leeijo, tried to make a transition between this public space and the older existing structures. So that's what he was going for with this build. So first thing, most obvious thing is just how incredible this retaining wall work that he did is. There are so many retaining walls going in so many different ways. The other thing that struck me right off the bat was this sort of, I guess it's like maybe a valet parking road or it's a service road that is also very wavy and leads kind of like down to the underneath part of this and dead ends at a roundabout. If you look down there, it's pretty cool. There's like a bunch of glass doors that lead into, presumably like maybe a mall or some sort of thing down there. And the other thing that struck me right off the bat was just how well detailed this area along the train tracks was. It's pretty cool, this contrasting kind of zigzag retaining wall style here as opposed to the curves everywhere else. Next to this is a parking structure which has these wall ivy props that are from the Park Life DLC, I think. No, Green Cities DLC. And I actually had to rip this thing apart, like move all the pieces out and then move them back in because I just had to see how this was built. There's a bunch of like scaffolding pieces on the inside that are what the ivy is like attached to, and then at the top there's like this fence piece that goes around the whole thing, like sort of jagged, zigzaggy, makes like a cap to the top of it. And then if you start to kind of look a little deeper at this build, there's just some really awesome little details like buried here and there. There's this little spot where there's some cones around like some debris in the road in like this older section. There's an empty lot, which isn't that crazy, but isn't something I would have ever thought of. If you look at Kobayashi Island, there's not a single other empty lot. I think this was an extremely successful build, so I'm really happy to be finally showing it off to all of you as the winner of the build off. If you guys want to do another build off in the city or in Mars, let me know in the comments. This first time around wasn't very popular, clearly, but the result was still amazing. So maybe we'll do another one if there's enough interest. So let me know. So the other thing to go over this episode was what Leeijo did in episode 40 of Kobayashi Island, which is releasing simultaneously with this episode. So in case you missed Leeijo's first build, episode 39 of Kobayashi Island, I would highly recommend going to his channel, which is linked in the description, and checking that out. If any of you guys watched some of the earlier episodes of Kobayashi Island, I know a lot of you are new to the channel, so I'm not expecting you guys to, but I did mention a number of times how there's an area along the beach here, a little bit further out from the city, from Old Town, that I wanted to kind of make sort of like a seaside, beachy kind of town. and I had some larger roads kind of leading to this area and some train lines leading this way. And Leeijo took over this build for me, and I think it turned out better than I could have ever made it. He took a lot of inspiration from a place called Fujisawa, which is just a little bit south of Tokyo. It's kind of like a beach town a little bit. The centerpiece of this area is a very custom train station that Leeijo built that has 4 different platforms and a very iconic sort of bus and taxi turnaround area that apparently is very common in Japan. If you look at some of Kamanogi's work, who is a YouTuber and also asset creator, he did the Modern Japan pack that came out with Sunset Harbor. He builds a lot of areas like this where there's like a bus turnaround, directly outside of a train station. And so I trusted if Kamanogi is making it, that probably means it really does exist in Japan. So this is a pretty cool thing that Leeijo built with like some oil stained decals under the park buses and things. If we follow the train tracks along the water a little bit, this is a really cool aspect to this build, that these train tracks kind of follow this little river here, and it actually works out really well. I discussed this a bunch with Leeijo during his process of making this, how he started off by building kind of like a very small canal that kind of just like dead-ended. It went from the ocean and just kind of like went inland, maybe a couple hundred yards. But I saw that and I was like, Leeijo, man, what you got to do is make this into kind of like a river and connect it to the rivers that come down from the mining town. Because when I built that mining town and didn't have a connection for that river, I kind of like just made it dead end into a lake. That always struck me as being so weird, how there are these like giant rivers coming down from the mountain that kind of like dead ended into this little tiny lake. That made no sense. So having those rivers connect to the ocean here just like worked out wonderfully, and having these train tracks go along the river as part of Leeijo's build, I think really looks cool. The other thing that was awesome about this build is just how much detail went into the actual beach along here. He has these like rows of beach chairs and umbrellas and cabanas, like maybe this is part of like a beach club or some sort of resort or something. If you go a little bit further, there's these awesome lifeguard stands, towers, whatever they are, huts, and some other huts that I guess maybe sell some snacks or some tables and chairs outside. A little bit further along, if we go on the other side of the canal, this is kind of like a little, maybe like a fishing area where people can put their boats into the water here and drive their boats back up onto the land once they've come back with a bunch of fish. A lot of little stalls here and storage facilities. And then the centerpiece of this whole entire build, in my mind at least, I think in Leeijo's mind too, I'm pretty sure it was the very first thing he placed down in this whole area, is there's like a hotel here along the ocean. It has like a tennis court and a pool and a manicured grassy area. And I'm just gonna zoom in on this grassy area, and I want you to look at it and take a second and see if you notice anything strange or unique about this, like maybe something about the decals that doesn't seem like you should be able to do normally. Like if you know this grass decal, it's pretty large, so why is it going into a smaller and smaller area? How is it not getting onto this sidewalk on either side of it, you might be asking? Right, so this is Procedural Objects that has done this, and it is not as complicated as some of you might be thinking. Even the name Procedural Objects is kind of scary, and just looking at the UI, it's kind of scary as well. But, I thought because both $2.20 and Prez recently mentioned how they were a little bit intimidated by this mod and didn't want to jump into using it, that we would do a nice little simple, very basic tutorial of the quickest, easiest, most useful little tiny functions that this mod has. And listen, I'm not trying to call anyone out here. I was afraid to use this mod for years of playing, maybe not years, a long time of playing this game. And I'm sure there are many other people who maybe downloaded this mod once and looked at the UI and tried to figure out how it works and were like, oh geez, like I'm not even gonna try this. That was me up until not too long ago. So let's just pretend we installed the mod today It's up here in the corner. We don't want it. That's an annoying place for it to be. So if you right click it and drag it, I put it down here. Next thing, let's just grab this grass decal, right? It's here. Notice how it's on the sidewalk and on the road. We click convert to PO, and now it's a procedural object, and we're gonna click it and place it down. And I'm just going to close this. We don't need that. We can use the Move It tool. Wonderful Move It tool, trusty old Move It tool. And if you just click PO here, we can select procedural objects using the Move It tool, right? Look how handy that is. And see how this grass doesn't go up on the sidewalk? So that's one of the really cool, easy features of procedural objects, is the way it deals with decals. Okay, so the other really nifty thing that procedural objects can do is scale things. And this is really useful for signs and all sorts of stuff. So let's just grab a prop. I'm grabbing this little cone, convert them to PO, put them in the middle of the street. And if we click on this plus and go to edit, and then we go to the generate tool, and then change this from position to scale, what we can do is use the page up over and over and over and just start scaling this thing as big as we want it. I think that's probably a good size for now. Perfect cone placement. So that's basically like two very simple, very useful aspects of procedural objects that don't even get into all the like crazy stuff that it can do, like in terms of meshes and texturing things and all sorts of crazy stuff. So there's some people who are absolute masters at this mod, Skibbeth and Comrade Intense, to name a few, that use all the functionality of it. I don't personally know everything that this mod can do. It's pretty vast, but hopefully those two little tricks are a good sort of segue into at least downloading and trying the mod for little things here and there when you want to scale something up or scale something down or get a decal just slightly more precise. Anyways, that's it for this half episode, 95 and a half. No, 35 and a half. Definitely go check out Leeijo's episode 40, which is also out now. He did, as you saw, an amazing build, and there's a lot of other crazy awesome techniques that he used in that. The link is in the description. Hope you guys learned something a little bit from the procedural objects stuff. If that's a mod that you've never used before, maybe give it a try, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.